Welcome to another episode of Not That Hard to Homeschool, the podcast for real people so that you can confidently, competently, and yes, even contentedly provide the high school education that is best for your teens and your family. I'm your host, Lisa Nehring from notthathardtohomeschool.com. Hey everybody, it is Lisa from Not That Hard to Homeschool, and I'm here with Gina, and we are your admin team, and so we're excited to come and talk to you today. We've had several questions on the groups about how to teach your kids how to learn, or what we would focus on to teach our kids how to learn. So we want to share with you a really simple tool that we've both used in our homeschool with our 9 kids collectively. Wow, we have 9 kids together. That's crazy. Well, you have 10 now. I mean, you have 5 now. So 10 kids collectively. And this tool you can use across grade levels or subject matters. It's a great way to homeschool all your kids together, even if they're different ages and all that kind of stuff. So Gina, so glad you're here with me. You're kind of one of the big faces behind the groups too. So you guys have seen Gina's name quite a bit. You might recognize this teaching technique by the term the 5 common topics. And I heard about it years ago. And I thought it was really interesting because that's what we did a lot of our homeschooling is we use the 5 common topics. But this goes way back to, I think, Aristotle, where he grouped them all together. And we have a little ebook about it. But you didn't, and it's really hot in classical circles. The 5 common topics and the 5 canons of rhetoric. If you've homeschooled classically, you've probably heard those terms. Gina, you didn't really take that path as you homeschooled, did you? Like, not directly, but sort of.
No, we didn't really adopt a classical model as a whole, but we definitely ended up inadvertently picking up some of the classical model because it worked really well with the principal approach model, which is the primary or foundational model I used in my homeschooling. And so those 5 common topics or what we call the 5 common topics, we were using as a method to teach our kids to think and reason through any topic, any subject. And principal approach just took it one step further, I would say, in that we looked at what scripture had to say on a subject to align our worldview. Yeah. That would be the primary difference. But no, they're almost like magic when you think about them.
Yeah. They are. They're so simple. The other thing that I've been really thinking about the 5 common topics the last couple weeks about is we still have a kiddo in college, and she's really running up against other kids who don't start with definitions. She just did a project where they had to do a speech and debate, and she did that through high school where they always start with definitions, but the kids on her team didn't want to do definitions. And she's like, well, then what are we going to debate? And so I think just the critical thinking factor that goes into this is so helpful for our kids. So like you said, learn how to really critically think through kind of things. So do you want to start with one of the pieces of the 5 common topics?
I love the first one because if you only master one of the 5, this one is the one to master, and that's define your terms.
Right.
So whether you're talking in a personal relationship with another person, you're teaching your kids to have those social skills, or you're looking at an actual school subject, or you're looking at a philosophy, a methodology, a worldview. It's so helpful. Actually, it's not just helpful, it's necessary to first define. If you don't have common definitions or you don't have, we can use the same word and mean something totally different. So teaching our kids to clarify by defining our terms, that one alone will get you a long way.
Right.
And that will help them as they go through anything they're trying to learn, understand the vocabulary associated with the subject, and then being able to apply that, that helps you just, if the teacher says one thing and you think it means another, then you're lost. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But in everyday communication, if we're talking, and this is so easy to do, especially in our online world, it's so easy to miss each other.
Yes.
So defining our terms about anything, it does, you've ever heard, let's have a good, clean fight. Well, we're not really going to fight, but it is the internet. But in order to have a good, clean fight or a good debate, you really do have to understand the terms. It's like a mutual agreement that these things mean this thing.
Yeah.
so that when you're moving through the rest of the 5 common topics, you start with an agreement or disagreement, but you at least know what the terms are.
Exactly. Right. Definition is so very important. I think it's kind of mushy in this day and age of postmodern cut and paste. Like
Mhm.
definitions are like, well, it's what my experience is, and really it creating a definition that's external to the people just makes everything more objective.
It does. It does. Yes.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want your doctor to not use that
Right.
first
Right. Exactly.
definition. And I don't think it just applies to the medical world. So
Right.
definitely.
Exactly. Okay. So definition is so important, and you can use this across subject matters. You can use it for history or theology or English or, I mean, just the whole distinctions in English between what is a verb and what is a gerund. Well, they take different actions in the sentence. So not everybody's going to do the deep dive to get to the point of gerund, but understanding what a verb does or doesn't do in a sentence can really help you communicate so much more easily and effectively. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
The second one, well, and they don't really have to go in any particular order. You can use these for anything. But the relationship one, and I was really thinking about that before we got started this morning. The difference between relationship and circumstance. Circumstance is another one of the 5 common topics because I think they're easy to get a little confused.
Mhm.
But relationship is who am I to somebody else? So are Gina and I sisters or friends or coworkers? And the relationship that we have to each other. And again, you can use that across subject matters. Like you could use it for geography. What is Poland's relationship to Germany, or what's
Mhm.
Mexico's relationship to Germany?
Yeah.
Those make big differences, right?
Yeah.
One is next door and one is across an ocean. So circumstance, however, has to do with context. So this is one of the reasons I think every student needs to take world geography before they get into world history and US history, because if you don't understand geography, which is the context, you're going to have a hard time understanding what was going on with Germany and Poland during World War II. Even though they have this relationship to each other, what's the context and how does that all matter? So or circumstance is context, where, what, the time, all those kind of things. Where relationship is how are we interacting and what are we to each other and what are we not to each other. It's not just what we are, but what are we not.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, you have kind of like a different, like the principal approach is slightly different, not that much, but a little bit.
I think one of the hallmarks, and I was sitting here, the reason I was quiet is I was trying to think of where this fits into those 5 common topics, but you can help me with that. And that is seeing cause to effect, like what's the root cause of something
Mhm.
versus the effect.
Yeah.
And that's key in teaching
Yeah.
in the principal approach. And I think that has a role in the 5 common topics. If you understand relationship and circumstance, that's going to help you understand cause to effect.
Yeah.
So one of the examples that's often given is when the nation of Israel kept going back to Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, and then they wanted a king. You remember this whole
Yeah.
story?
Yep.
Well, why did they want a king? It's like, well, was it because the other nations had kings? No, it was because of something in their own heart. That was the root cause. So there's the lesson for us.
Right.
Why are we looking to other nations? So it was a heart issue.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't place relationship to each other and circumstance, and then you might miss the cause to effect. And in the long run, cause to effect is what sticks with you. Like you can understand. You might not remember the names of the kings, or even it was Israel and who. I don't remember who. Your kids will internalize that they remember that they look to something outside themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The Israelites did, and your kids can relate to this, and so can we.
Right.
To fill something that only God can. That's basic principle, and so that has a place in the common topics because it's a outer working of all those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Together. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Well, and the cause to effect too. I mean, I'm kind of stuck on World War II because I think it's an obvious thing that we can look back on and look at objectively at this point a little bit. But what was the cause that just got under Germany's skin to make them want to be so military and to conquer different areas. I mean, if you go back to World War One, then you see, okay, well, what happened there that ended up in World War Two? I mean, the cause effect is so very important. Yeah.
Well, and if you look at, you were talking about circumstance and, oh my gosh, the other one just went out of my head. Relationship, circumstance and relationship. If you think in the textbook, it just tells you about Ferdinand. Like that was the key point. And so you can be led to believe that event happened and it spiraled all these other things out of control. But that's not really the big picture. That's not really what happened.
Right. That's one piece, one little piece. Yeah, we did read about Ferdinand in 8th grade. He was the catalyst for the whole rest of the next 20 years.
That poor guy. Now, look, forever, every school kid thinks that. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so definition, relationship, circumstance, and this one is authority. And this one is so very important because who is the one, who do people refer back to as where they're getting their definitions, or what is the authority in their life that gives them the impetus to go forward? And I think authority is so very important because right now we hear a lot of kids talking about their truth. Well, people in general talking about their truth. In other words, their authority is themselves. And so I think it's important to establish authority because, one of the things I learned in teaching logic, which was, it's not my happy place. So when I say I taught logic, it wasn't like I got to teach logic. It was like, I taught logic. It was hard. But if you're starting from your own primary, you're like, it's your core belief and you keep referring back to that referentially, it's not circular reasoning, it's your core belief. And I think it's really important to understand that when we're talking to people, if it seems like they're using circular reasoning, you might want to ask some questions about, is that, to get to the fact, like, is that really their core belief, or are they just blowing you off? Because circular reasoning is a great way to blow people off. That was like really logic mumbo jumbo. So I'm sure somebody else could explain it way better than I just did, but I think it's an important point because, people their core beliefs are really important to them. That's why they're core to them, and they're not going to give them up easily.
Yeah. When we talk about authority, and we talk about your truth, my truth, the truth, there's a truth there. And we're all kind of, going back to definitions, what do we establish as truth? What is the barometer we're going to use, or the metric, or the foundation that how we're going to define truth?
Yes.
And that core belief, with your kids, you're helping them form their core beliefs. And then as they get to be teenagers and they go through ideation and they're trying to be their own person, you can just count on they're going to take some of your core belief and some of the things they believe and have reasoned through, hopefully, and they're going to have a new core belief.
Yeah.
But hopefully, prayerfully, some of those core beliefs that mean the most to you, like if you rank them, those, when we talk about at True North, when we talk about a transmission of culture, these are the kind of things that we're trying to transmit. Those strong core beliefs that are based on a moral compass, and that moral compass, of course, hopefully is based on God's word, or what God has to say to us. So I think that's important.
Right. Exactly. And you might have different core beliefs about different things. I mean, your core beliefs about food might be informed by nutrition or a medical issue that you have, or it might be like based on your faith or religion. The kosher laws are based on a faith system, but they also get back to health things too. So it just depends on what you're talking about. If it's whatever subject. But authority is great to talk about when you're doing subjects, because things like math, if kids say, well, I don't see why 2 + 2 has to equal 4. It's a simple matter of authority. These are the math rules and laws. The end. We don't get our truth in math. It's just what it is. It's fact-based. And so I think that's really helpful for kids sometimes when they're just really struggling with a concept. Help them go back to the authority of the concept and where is it coming from? And that might be a great conversation to have with them. The one thing I want to point out with all of these, they are great conversation starters with your kids. And I know as our kids get older, it might be more complicated and struggling. It might be a struggle to have those conversations with your kids. But if you just go back to these things, even if you're watching a movie together, you could even just have these conversations about the movie that you watched. Like, well, let's define what we were talking about, or, what is the relationship to this person to that person? And
Yep.
it's not an emotional conversation, but you get some great thoughts and ideas as a result of these kind of questions.
I think that's a good point that you make. It's not an emotional conversation because
Yeah.
it's really easy to do when our kids start growing up.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're almost looking at another adult. They're not, maybe they're 16, 17 years old, or in my case, maybe they're in their 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And you're having conversations and we talked about those core beliefs.
Yeah.
If you can actually learn something from one another if you can set aside the emotional aspect of the conversation and just know they're not going to believe everything you believe exactly to the letter all down the line, because if you look at your own parents,
Yeah,
you can see certain shifts. But if you talk about, if you can talk about things and leave some emotion out of it, not get worked up, it does leave the door for communication open. And if you can apply these 5 common topics, so you're at least working together on commonalities and, the same authorities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think homeschooling is a great way to raise your kids. It's a great way to educate your kids, but let's be honest, like it's not always easy. You still have the same kind of struggles in relationships that you do whether your kids are at home or at school or at private school, because people are people and your kids are going through developmental tasks. And by the way, you are too at the same time your kids are. And I think that's like kind of an under discussed thing with homeschooling parents and just parents in general. Like, our kids are going through these stages and ages, but as adults, we are too. And sometimes those ages and stages really butt heads together.
You do. And you're not the same parent to your first one as you are to your third one. Oh my God.
Right.
I always think, that first one is a guinea pig. No kidding. No
They
kidding.
are.
You are learning. You've read all the books and you can see every kind of funny meme in the world on the internet about it, but it's really true. And so, that's a lot of what you just shared. Yeah,
it is. So my youngest daughter, who is in so many ways more like a firstborn because of age, the age between kids, and we had a boy before her, and then she's a girl. We were having lunch, and she just looks at me and she goes, "You're such a middleborn, and I'm such a firstborn." And it's so true. Like even across generations, like those things do kind of hold true a little bit.
They do. I'm an oldest. I'm a firstborn, and then I have my son. He's my oldest, and then we didn't have my first daughter, and there's a 4-year gap, a little over 4, and so I always feel like I have 2 firstborns.
Yes,
and then and then there's a baby in the family.
You have a definite baby in the family.
Everyone would agree in our family who the baby is.
They would. I don't know. It's kind of confusing in our family. We have 5 kids, but there's 3 to 5 years between each one. And then it goes 2 girls with a 4-year gap, and then a boy with a 4-year gap, and then a boy with a 5.5-year gap, and then a girl. So it's like, I think we have 5 firstborns. I mean, I think really seriously, like everybody was opinionated in my household.
That's hilarious. And here you are. Is your husband a firstborn?
He's a secondborn, but his older sister had a lot of physical problems, so he co-opted that spot in many ways, right? And actually, so did my sister did too in high school, and so we're secondborns with firstborn issues.
Those things are so fun to look at.
Yeah, here we are. We're talking about 5 common topics. Seriously.
It works. It's how we'll just say we'll connect it this way. This is how where you're born in your family, your birth order affects how you approach those 5 common topics.
Exactly. Right. It's so true. I think the last one we're going to talk about is my favorite, and this is compare and contrast. And I love this. I love comparing and contrasting. It's something I do naturally. I don't know that everybody does, but I used to say I had the gift of criticism to kind of take the edge off of it, which I know it's not a spiritual gift. So I've been told that it's not. I do know that. But I think that's part of what makes me really good at editing things and concept editing is because I look at this and go, well, it's not that, but it could be this. But comparing and contrasting can be such a great educational tool.
Mhm.
Compare and contrast Germany at the turn of the 19th century versus 1925 after the First World War and 1945 after the Second. I mean, there are some sharp and clear differences. And then you can get back to like what was the cause of that, all those kind of things. But comparing and contrasting can be so helpful. Even like just comparing one piece of literature to another. My daughter decided to read a bunch of dystopian literature this summer, so she was comparing Animal Farm to 1984, which is so fascinating. But you can do it across subjects:
Yeah.
geography, history, English, science, even foreign languages. It's such a fun way to look at things and get to the nuances of different issues.
Yeah, we used a fun tool, and it was actually, I didn't create this tool, but it was created by the late Mr. James Rose, and he called it Take Tea, like, teacup, take tea
Yeah,
and see. And you probably can't see my tea chart, but
a little bit. Yeah.
make a tea chart and you would put Animal Farm on one side,
Hmm.
1984 on the other, and
Yeah.
you can use that for a compare contrast, but you can use that
Yeah.
tea chart anytime for a compare contrast.
Yeah, so helpful. We learned in Lost Tools of Writing to make an Annie chart. So you put the affirmatives on one side, the negatives in another column, and then interesting facts in a third column. And I found that to be really a great critical thinking tool as well, especially if you assign the kids. Like you have to come up with 15 to 30 things in each column because then they start comparing and contrasting. They start looking at relationships and circumstances. If you just put the first five down, that's easy. Anybody can come up with five affirmatives or negatives. But when you start saying 15 to 20 to 30, you have to really start thinking very creatively about the problems and doing some critical thinking. And it is actually a difficult task. I did this with junior hires, and we actually had to do it together several times because it really causes the kids to think about the issues of the we were doing literature about the piece of work, so
Mhm.
it's like the T chart, and then you just add an interesting column, and that's a great way to think creatively about the situations too. But I love comparing and contrasting.
If a parent wanted to get started with this, okay, maybe maybe they're still using textbooks or workbooks, or they're using some free online stuff that's, printables driven or whatever. Um, how could you get started with the five common topics?
Mhm. Yeah, we do have an ebook at True North Homeschool Academy. And actually, my 23-year-old son and I wrote it together several years ago. He's taught at True North he taught Latin and he's doing Old Testament, New Testament this year. But we actually have a unit study in there based on the trebuchet. He's a big war military expert kind of guy. Like he loves history and he knows a lot about it. So we took the trebuchet, and there's graphics in there. And we just went through the definition of a trebuchet, the relationship of a trebuchet to other medieval weapons of war, who started the trebuchet, why was it started, comparing and contrasting it to ancient types of warfare or war mechanisms. I guess it's a machine, right? Like, yes, it is a machine. And current ones. And then where and when would it be used? And there's other examples too. We do one for geography and all that kind of stuff. But I would say, honestly, if you don't want to get the ebook, that's fine. But start with definition, because definition is so great and it's simple because you can literally Google the definition or just get your dictionary out and define terms. And that's a great way to just start critically thinking about anything that you're studying. And I mean, printables and textbooks are great. I think they're a great starting place if you feel like you don't want to put it all together yourself, or you just want to know that it's all done there for you. But I would say the thing about textbooks that I think is limited is they don't go too deep into the five common topics. They're
Mhm.
telling the student what to think about a situation. That's why we all know King Ferdinand, right? Because we read it in
Right.
a textbook and we're like, well, King Ferdinand, he was the problem. He was the troublemaker.
Answer, check plus. Yes.
Exactly, right? And then we all got our A. So I think even just if you start with King Ferdinand, that's great. Define who King Ferdinand was. Just go look him up. And what does a king mean? what did his name mean? And then you can go into his relationship to the rest of Europe. By whose authority was he made king? What is the authority of a king? All those kind of things. Definition is a great place to start, I think.
Well, I love the 5 common topics, and I'll tell you, it can open up learning for your kids.
Yeah.
So rather than, in the classical model, you have that whole parrot stage in the beginning.
Yeah.
But the key here is it's in the beginning.
Right.
And I think in some more modern educational models, we take that for the whole 12 years-ish that they're in school. And if we can ask them a question and they can give us King Ferdinand as the answer, we assume they understand.
Yes.
They might know something, know a fact, but it's what we do with the facts that we learn. And the 5 common topics will open up the facts, and it will help them to develop a love of learning. So using these, I think, is important. Are our kids able to even question who King Ferdinand is?
Right.
Would they think to ask that even? If you can say, I don't even know if I would ask that, then maybe start the 5 common topics with yourself.
Yeah.
And get in the practice of some of these, of one of the, of the 5 elements. And you can start, you can use it in Bible study, you can use it in a book you're reading, whatever, but internalize it yourself. It's much easier than to transmit it to your kids. And then you're modeling it. But yes, just the way it opens up.
Right.
So
yeah, it's great. It's great to have conversations. We still have conversations based on the 5 common topics. And we really formalized it when my kids were in junior high. We had laminated charts on the wall because it just felt like such an important tool. And that's the one thing I want to encourage you, if you're homeschooling for the first time, or even after you've done it for years and years, give your kids skills and tools to study with. Study skills are so important. And the 5 common topics are great study skills that they can take with them to college, to vo-tech training, to their marriage and relationships, because really understanding 5 common topics as you're having discussions with the people you love most can be super helpful. You guys might be in a big fight thinking you all are talking about the same thing. And if you just get back to definition, you might realize you were really talking past each other. And that seems like, I know we're probably the only people who've ever had heated arguments in the world, but it can really help diffuse situations. Just go back and say, no, I was actually talking about this. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, we don't need to argue anymore. It can be so simple. So I would say really give your kids study skills. And this is a really good basic one. You can use it for anything. You can create your own unit studies with it. Just pick a topic your kids love and do the 5 common topics with them. You could do it in a day, or you could do it over the course of a week or months or even years. We have some things that we're still studying in our home. And even though we don't have kids living with us anymore, we still have discussions on the phone about them because they're still an important, exciting course of study for all of us, So
sure.
it's fun. I know you guys have the same kind of relationships with your kids too. And I did say at the beginning, like, you did have 4 kids, but now you have 5. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. I did not birth another baby. So just so everybody's clear, I'm too old for that. But no, I have a stepdaughter now, and she's, fortunately, she actually she's going to go on to law school someday. So she already, learning the definitions would be a good thing, because she's at that stage where, debate would be great for her. If she were in a debate class and she got it out at school, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. But she has that, and I know I have the other 4. Naturally, I have some that are more, they would love to debate things, and that's great because their dad is like that too. So but I will say, equipping your kids with this method, or if it's a method, just a tool. But when my oldest went off to college, he came home, and one of the things he said to me was, he couldn't, there was no one else to have the great conversation with. And back when I was homeschooling, training your kids to have the great conversation, based on the great book series. And when the classical model was really first just making headway into the homeschool world, he was so sharp that that's what I wanted for him. Well, but when he got there, it's like what your daughter was experiencing, just like, who am I going to talk about these things with? Because they weren't equipped with the 5 common topics. They don't know how to approach them, but they're easy to learn and easy to pick up.
They
So,
are. They are. I think right now, the kids, it seems like that I've had experienced that have gone through public school for a very long time, that have been really good students. They get the knowledge, they get the information, and they're able to give it back on a test, but they haven't thought deeply necessarily about the information. So
mhm.
again, this is a thinking tool, and you can use it for anything. You can apply it to the curriculum that you're using. You can make your own curriculum from it. It's just such a great tool to have for life, and your kids will probably refer to it for the rest of their life once they learn it. I know I have. I think about it all the time, just as far as even how we set up our program at True North and what we're doing in different pieces that not that hard. So we'll link the booklet if you want to purchase it. It's just 5 common topics, not so common anymore, which is probably too cheesy of a title, but there you have it. So you guys, thanks for listening. Gina, thanks for chatting with me this morning.
Yes.
So much fun.
I
You guys,
guess we'll never do a 15-minute live. Sorry.
I know. We were like, let's just hop on for 10 or 15 minutes because we started to. Okay, so how do we start this whole conversation? We were talking the other day about some things coming up for Christmas, and we've got some great stuff planned. And we started talking about like critical thinking and our kids really needing tools for critical thinking. And honestly, this is such a great, simple tool. Doesn't cost you any money to teach your kids critical thinking skills. And they need them because they have so much coming at them
Yeah.
right now with social media and propaganda versus news, all those kind of things. So this will help them sort all those things out.
Yes. Urgent, really.
Urgent. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, thanks, you guys. We will talk to you all soon, and let us know if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Thank you.